I hope you weren't wearing earbuds. Anyways, if you didn't recognize it, that was Dreamland by Michael Markowski. Hi, I'm Matthew Lynn, and welcome to another exciting episode of How to Be a Percussionist. Today, we're going to be talking about time. Not the time found in movies or video games, but the time found in music. Specifically, meter. At the beginning of every piece, there are always going to be two numbers, one on top of the other. This is the meter. The top number tells you how many beats per measure there are, and the bottom number tells you how long each beat is. Let's look at some examples. Here we've got 4/4. The top number tells us how many beats per measure there are, which is 4. The bottom number tells us how long each beat is, which is 1 quarter note. Likewise, we can also have 8 eighth notes or 16 16th notes. Now, you might be wondering, if we can have 4 quarter notes per measure, and 8 eighth notes per measure, and 16 16th notes per measure, why don't we have meters such as 8/8 and 16/16? It would mean the exact same thing as 4/4. Well, the answer lies in how much counting and conducting is practical. In 4/4, we have 4 beats per measure, and likewise, we'll have 4 waves of the baton per measure, following this pattern. 1, 2, 3, 4. However, in 8/8, one would have to conduct 8 beats per measure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. If one were to try and conduct in 8/8, they'd have to wave their hands 8 times every measure, and each musician would have to count out 8 beats in their head every measure. This is very tiring and inefficient. In another example, let's look at 6/4. We could try and count out and conduct 6 beats per measure in 6, but instead of counting and conducting in 6, we'll instead count in 3. Following 6/4 in 3, we only have to conduct 1, 2, 3, and likewise only count 1 and 2 and 3 and in our heads. The meter, rhythms, and speed of each note will not change, but how one counts it in their head and how it is conducted will change. This will generally make things easier. Let's look at another example. Here we have 2/2. There are 2 beats per measure, and each beat is worth 1 half note. Just like in 4/4, you can have 2 half notes, 4 quarter notes, 8 eighth notes, or 16 16th notes per measure. Now let's go back to the beginning of Dreamland. Using what we've learned, where each beat gets 1 wave of the baton, let's look at the first measure. There are 5 beats per measure, and you'll see 5 waves of the baton. There are 5 beats per measure, and each note is a half note long. With 5 beats per measure, you'll see 5 waves of the baton following this pattern. Likewise, with 4/2, starting in measure 3, you'll see 4 waves of the baton. As a side note, do you remember how Spoon River was written in 2/2? It looked a little like this. This is another example of either conducting each beat, as in 4, or conducting in 2, conducting the half note. Let's go on to one more thing. Here are some meters written with eighth notes getting the beat. As discussed previously, having to conduct more than 5 notes per measure can be very inefficient and impractical. As such, the majority of composers will group the 7 eighth notes into groups of 3, such as these. There are several combinations to do this. In the case of Dreamland, Markowski publishes this using this grouping. You could count it as 1 2 3 1 2 1 2, 1 2 3 1 2 3 4 5 6 7, or 1 and 2 and 3 and. Remember, there will always be 3 waves of the baton, 1 for each grouping of notes, 1 for each note grouping. How you choose to count each measure is up to you. Personally, I like either the 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 or the 1 and 2 and 3 and. I don't like this middle one so much because 7 has 2 syllables in it. Also, as discussed before, how 4/4 and 2/2 look very similar, 7/8 will also look very much like 7/16, where you'll have the 3 eighth notes, and then 2 eighth notes, and 2 eighth notes. You can also count that as 1 2 3 1 2 1 2, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7, or 1 and 2 and 3 and. Finally, Measures using 8/8 meter, also found in Dreamland, can be grouped in these ways. In the case of Mr. Markowski, they follow this pattern, where you'll have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 1 and 2 and 3 and. Again, whatever works best for you. Finally, let's go to measure 72 on the percussion 3 shaker part. Let's take a listen and a look. See how we went from 4/4 to 3/4 and to 7/8? It does look confusing. However, if you listened, you heard that the shaker rhythm stayed exactly steady the same way it was before, regardless of the meter. How does one count this? Well, you have several options. As the quarter note in 4/4 and 3/4 will also equal the quarter note in 7/8, everything will go through in the same speed. You can choose to count it in your head, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and. Or you can choose to count it 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2. No matter what, remember to write in these counts, and also remember listen. And remember that the shaker part will always stay steady. This goes through any other part that you have throughout Dreamland. While the meters may change a lot on you, know that your part will always stay steady right with the beat. If you have any questions about this, make sure you try and write in the rhythms. That will really help you. Also, listen to the piece. Finally, please remember to number your measures. Numbering your measures will always greatly speed up the rehearsal process. If you do write in the counts, you can also, get extra help from me or Mrs. Owl, and you can make sure that your counts are correct. Also, playing along either in the air or on your hands with the piece on a recording on the computer can also help you practice. Anyways, I'll see you all tomorrow. Bye!